Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eileen Strumpel. It is my honor and pleasure to serve as the inaugural Dean of the Herb Alpert School of Music. And we are just honored and excited beyond belief to have Noelle Scaggs join us this afternoon. A riveting vocalist, absolutely amazing performer, and just an amazing activist too with her efforts with Diversify the Stage. This whole year, we've been having a series of conversations in this series founded by our Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Arturo O'Farrell, Still Waiting. And I think in this afternoon's conversation, it's just important to keep our hearts and minds open as we engage in conversation about not just thinking about access, but also thinking about a proactively welcoming ecosystem. It's not just being invited into the room, it's being welcomed into the room. And if there's no greater expert I know than someone to welcome us into the room than our wonderful Associate Dean Arturo. So without any further ado, the curator of the series and your MC for this afternoon, my beloved colleague, Arturo O'Farrell.
Thank you, Dean Strumpel. It's so kind of you to introduce me. I have incredible news. I'm actually in a nightclub. I'm going to show you guys an environment that Noelle knows very well. I'm going to be performing here, and I thought I could just go backstage and do a quiet little thing, or I could be in the field where Noelle Scaggs lives, where she's been living for years, electrifying audiences, creating unbelievable art of the highest order. And so I thought we could celebrate together with Noelle and talk a little bit about her career. She's got a beautiful, beautiful piece of music out now called Great For You, which I can't stop listening to. She's known as a part of Fitz And The Tantrums, and she's just, but so many things to say about Noelle. And of course, one of the biggest things is Diversify the Stage, the work that she's doing to see equity brought to the stage. So you might hear people talking, clinking glasses, but do not take your attention off of this incredible artist. Please help me welcome Noelle Scaggs.
Hello. I'm like always fumbling around with the Zoom buttons. You would think that I'd be a pro at this by now.
Yeah, I don't think I ever will. And you know what? I don't think I ever want to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're just gonna have a conversation, and it can go in any direction. Noelle, as I said, man, you're an amazing artist, amazing vocalist, amazing songwriter, lyricist. So it's just really, really fun to be here with you. I'm gonna start right by asking you, who are you?
I mean, I always have thought of myself as a creative with a sound business mind. That is always how I've, kind of told people about me. I started singing at a very young age. I just, had a love of music and listening to songs and really absorbing them, absorbing the words more so than anything. I always had this photographic memory when it came to words and, being intrigued by the lyrics and how they, were performed on a record. So I would keep journals. I still do. Journals and journals of, just songs and poetry I would hear, and I would just write down the lyrics to all of my favorite songs. And it really, I think, kind of helped shape me in my interests of becoming a songwriter and really wanting to understand the science behind songs. Why do we sing the things that we do? What is a chorus? What makes a great chorus? It was something that was always fascinating to me, but also I was a shy kid. I was very awkward always with making friends. Though I had friends, I was also, one of those young people that was often bullied because I was kind of an easy target, to do that with. And I found my voice in, activating it as a singer to kind of shift the narrative of that, you know, to kind of, you know, show people that I was more than what they perceived me as being, as this kind of target for punking or whatever it was back then. So I started singing on, you know, stage. I had an opportunity of doing a talent show. It was my first time singing in front of my mom. You know, like because what I used to do is I would listen to my dad's records on low key, because he was like a total DJ. He had all these amazing like disco records, and, you know, it was like Parliament. I was introduced to the funk period. So it was like all the early Parliament records, Earth, Wind and Fire, the Pointer Sisters, and then like all the spinners and doo-wop stuff, all the slow dance stuff that my parents would listen to. So I was really exposed to these record collections, all the B-sides, everything. And I would just like learn how to sing through listening to these records. I didn't know if I could actually sing. You know, like I just liked it, you know? So I had an opportunity of doing a talent show in like elementary school. It was like elementary school for me, or junior high was one of the two. And I did an a cappella version of, it had to be junior high, In Vogue. In Vogue's Just Can't Stay Away. I'm like, if I were gonna pick a song, it had to be the hardest song I could sing, right? Like all of the parts, all of, you know, like as much as you could do. I didn't know anything about singing with the band. I hadn't joined any of the like, you know, arts programs at school. We were very underfunded school at the time. So there was not a lot of arts programming, you know, and I just remember like performing on stage and like stopping like that, like awkward stop, and just standing ovation. Like it was like,
I mean, you were singing the harmony parts as well?
I was singing all of the lead parts. I could, you know, we had like the music playing, you know, like just so I could get my key, and then it was basically a cappella after that. So I sang like all of what was like, it's not Dawn, it was Terry, all of her parts, because she was the lead on that song, you know, and I just sang the chorus, like all of the top line, you know, melody stuff. And that was like my first performance in front of an audience, you know, basically going from my bedroom to a stage. And I loved it, you know, and I didn't stop. And once my mom like identified that, you know, I had a real interest in music and that, you know, I was talented at it, or at least, you know, from her perspective as a mother who was always in the arts, like she was always into painting and dancing and doing things like that. But her mother didn't really like support her, because back in those days you couldn't make money as an artist. You know, you had to look at other jobs that you could pay the bills on. So she kind of gave up all of her artists, like, you know, things that she wanted to do, and she supported me when she discovered that I could do it. So she put me in piano lessons, she put me in vocal training, and, you know, at this point I was like getting into high school, and, you know, I was, you know, at the time, like every young kid, it's like it was fun until it wasn't fun anymore. I was like, I don't want to be going to piano lessons on the weekends when I can be hanging out with my friends. You know, like it kind of like didn't take as much. Like I was like, yeah, I got it. You know, I can do the basics. I actually started writing songs because of the basics of piano that I was able to take with me, but I wasn't like I didn't practice. My practice was pen and pad. Always, always, always. That was always it, coming up with like melodies, coming up with my own songs and doing that kind of stuff. And then just like the basic bare bone kind of like chord progressions that I could remember. You know, so by the time I got into like high school, I was, you know, singing all the time, was doing every assembly. Like the minute people could, you know, found out that I could sing, they're like, will you do this? Or can we have you for the senior baccalaureate, or, you know, the senior graduation? You know, it was like all of these things. So I was constantly like on a stage, like people were, you know, super encouraging. But when I got into college, I didn't want to do, I didn't want to perform.
I mean, you have a voice with an instrument like you have. I mean, there's no way that we would have let you not perform. That's just all there is to it.
I think it was, for me, it was, you know, it kind of came down to like, I don't know how to get into this industry. Like what really is it to have like a music career? You know, like I didn't really have a full understanding. And I've always been one of those people that never really, like, I would dive into things, but I wouldn't without any type of like understanding of what I was getting into. You know, like I always had to be prepared in some way.
Let me stop there and ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, and I know you're going to hear me and understand because you've been there, a lot of times standing up in front of a band is a very, it's a scary experience.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the first time you got up in the front of a bunch of people, mostly men probably,
Yeah.
right? And,
Yeah.
and had to exude confidence and deal with the vibe. What was that like?
That was for me, it was kind of like I was thrown into it. So like, you know, at that point it was like I was really pursuing artistry at that point. Like I had gone and studied music publishing and everything. And I was like, okay, I'll have a try at it. I got a manager, you know, I had all this stuff and she helped me, found a music director. And for me, it was really difficult navigating how I express what I'm hearing in my head to really seasoned musicians. Because again, I only knew the basics. I could only have basic conversations. But the folks that I was being put on stage with were literally seasoned theory musicians and the whole thing. So I had to express, you know, myself with getting the sound that I wanted to hear in a way that I could, you know, express, like verbally express. And it was super hard for me,
so
you know, to do that.
It sounds to me like you weren't intimidated by it. It sounds to me like you actually weren't intimidated by the experience.
No, I did it. I mean, I did, but it also turned me off to wanting to do it. So it was like after that experience of like dealing with a band and having to pay people and like all of the things that come with it, I wasn't prepared for that. And it was exactly why I didn't want to get involved in the first place. You know, not having real understanding of what that looked like on the business end. How am I responsible for paying the band when you put it together? I just didn't understand the concept of an MD. I didn't understand the concept of like a venue and then like all of the money that I made, my blood, sweat, and tears put into promotion and us splitting it. It was like, no, you don't get anything. You have to pay the whole band. And this is what I promised them. Like, it was kind of like trying to navigate the territory by being thrown in it. And for me, it was kind of like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, it's scary. You know? It's scary. And then when you have management, agent, tour director, sound person,
and at that time, I had just turned 18. I was like 18, you know, 19 years old, just kind of like finding my way, like figuring out if I really wanted to pursue this. And anything that I decide I'm going to do, I do it, you know, but I was very ill prepared for the business side of it, you know, outside of what I'd learned in school on publishing.
Yeah, no, it's pretty daunting. I mean, it's really understanding kind of the way that the lay of the land of how to be a business person. Can you talk to us? There are a lot of young people who would love to hear, how do you mitigate that sense of yourself as an artist with that sense of yourself? Because this is the thing that I always tell people. You're not your art.
No.
You are you, and you have to cultivate you. And you have to, can you tell us about how you mitigate yourself as an artist, as that person who's Noelle and the person who's a product? Like, how do you mitigate that?
I put boundaries. Major boundaries. You know, it's really funny because I was just talking to my manager about that. How I've been able to separate myself as a human being, Noelle Scaggs, from the brand, you know, the perceived piece of Noelle Scaggs, right? And I've always done that, I think, because I've never fully embraced that idea of fame or what it means to be extremely popular or to have people in your business like that. You know, like I always wanted to make sure that I had a life in addition to my life as a artist, as a creator, you know, that I didn't have people banging down my door. Like, I chose the path that I did creatively with this understanding that I wasn't trying to be Beyonce. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't trying to like really jump in there. I wanted success, absolutely. When I dove into the career path of being an artist, absolutely. I could see when the ceiling had hit. I knew when it was time to move on from a project. I knew when I was growing faster. I could recognize all of that.
I mean, that's so mature. How do you know when it's time to move on from a project? How do you know?
You gotta
That takes
trust your intuition. It's very much intuition. I think one of the things that the women in my family always instilled in me was to think for myself and to trust my heart above all things. You know, there's something in your gut that navigates you, and often for us, that gut feeling also manifests into fear, because it's like, well, if I decide to make this decision and I fail, then what's going to be my fallback? You know.
But you don't strike me as someone who ever thought you'd fail. Like you understood what you wanted to accomplish, and I'm not talking about success.
Yeah,
I'm talking about you understood what you wanted to be, which was an artist.
I knew I wanted to do something in artistry, whether or not it was as a performer or as a songwriter on the back end, or if it was helping other people with their stardom and becoming those artists, like, you know, being that kind of like music publisher. Like, I was fascinated by the business side of it, like the back end and everything that went on there.
Amazing.
I was super like on the label and like music publishing side. I'd always been interested in that. You know, the live obviously came just with opportunities and me not saying no to them, and that's how I got my chops on the road. You know, but for me, it was very much, I was very much about like, I think like my calling is like, yeah, I'll, you know, like I can do this, like I can totally do this, but I feel like my calling is to, and whenever that happens, is to help other people. Cause I used to watch so many of my friends like that were like in hip hop, and, you know, they're trying to navigate the territory and they're getting in these really awful record deals. You know, or not even, you know, like even if they didn't have like, you know, like an independent, they would get a distro deal and they wouldn't be registered for their PROs. Like they had no idea what ASCAP or BMI was. And I was like, there is literally money sitting around for you. Like, these distribution companies are pushing your product and coding them. There is money that is available for you. You know, and, you know, I used to watch a lot of my friends struggle. You know, I was like, you guys should learn about this and, you know, all of these things. So I plant like little seeds and people would start doing it, you know.
It's incredible. One of my friends is Tom Kelly, who wrote Like a Virgin. Yeah. Imagine how many times over that paid for his house and his pool and his cars. And
oh my God, still paying for it.
Also, I See Your True Colors. He wrote that as well. So it's one miracle to have a huge hit, and then to have two or three or four or five, and it's really something. And you know, I wish you would talk about songwriting, because it's a really beautiful career option. And we talk a lot about in NARIS, we talk a lot about in professional circles, but we don't talk a lot about it in conservatory. And I know a student here in particular who is interested in production and songwriting, and I think it's a beautiful career path. And so, you know, we'd love to hear some of your exhortations on that subject.
I think for me, like, you know, one, honing into what your sound is, like your voice. It takes a long time to find that, and it's ever changing. You know, you always you find it, and then you grow into it, and you're able to kind of like bend and shape it, but there's something that's unique about you and your approach when you're considering the crafting of songs. And it's just so funny, because I was just talking to one of the cohort participants in my program. She's a drummer, and she is really adamant about now, you know, being on the stage. Like, she likes that, you know, she wants to play with other artists and do the whole thing. And, you know, I told her, I was like, I need you to take a popular songwriting course, because as a drummer, it's real hard for you to get publishing. It's real hard for you to get publishing on a song, because you cannot quantify a rhythm into a melody, right? Which makes the structure of a song the song. So a lot of drummers are becoming producers. they're able to,
I've seen that a lot.
you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of my drummers doing that, like creating tracks, going back to songwriting school, taking all of the things in theory and things that he knows about in just like jazz and, you know, even playing piano, taking piano lessons and stuff like that. Because there's an ownership, and when you are contributing to a song, also being able to contribute to what makes the song that is recognizable. You know, there's influence, absolutely, but I think it's a lot harder for percussionists and people to really get their flowers on songs that they've helped influence because of that measure, you know. So I encourage, you know, instrumentalists, you know, people that are part of the crafting, that are doing sessions, that are doing all of these things, or just like working with artists in general, to like know what it is to craft a song, to like understand the makeup of it, and, you know, all of the things that make the songs work in a commercial space, you know, because there's unlimited possibilities for you when you understand that side of it, when you can collaborate in a way.
Well, I mean,
really,
I think,
really, yeah.
I think working, I mean, writing, you know what happened to me the other day? I don't know what, I just turned on some Sly and the Family Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally had to pull the car over because of the genius of this man's writing. And I'm a classic trained jazz pianist with a proclivity towards funk.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to pull the car over because I could not believe song after song. It's a family affair. Thank you for letting me be myself. Song after song after song of genius songwriters. I mean, songwriting. Sly.
Yeah.
You know, and then Sly was someone who apparently didn't take care of business. Apparently he sold his publishing.
He sold his publishing too early. He sold his publishing too early. That's another thing that's popping up nowadays is, you know, the buying of catalogs. And, you know, there's a lot of folks that are recognizing if I pay you X amount of dough per, you know, for this period of time, you know, I can benefit off the fruits of your labor, but I've basically given you an advance for monies that you would probably make over time anyway, you know. And a lot of people are getting out. They're doing that. But what they're not saying is the mature songs are the ones that are the most valuable because they have a proven track record. They're recognizable. They're always going to be in play. They have basically a basis of what you're making annually. So those are the songs that those people want. And those are big money songs. If you
look at catalogs. I mean, catalogs are
catalogs. Yeah. You don't have to sell all of it. You certainly don't have to sell certain rights, like, you know, the royalty streams. You can totally control that. You know, a lot of people, nowadays I'm looking at songs like you do the appreciation of a home. You know, it's property that you own, it's land, it's, you know, the understanding of copyright is so valuable.
Intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
Intellectual property, which has real value. People don't really realize that it has real value. I just want to say, you may hear the sound of people coming into the club.
Yeah.
I'm just going to I thought it would be beautiful to have this. I could have gone backstage and had this with you in an office.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just such an opportunity to talk about performing in clubs and little clubs and stadiums. I mean, because let's face it, you hit it big. I mean, you hit it big. And so like that thing from playing in little clubs and then going into arenas, like, what is that like? Because you know what? I have to admit, I don't think I'm going to end up playing in an arena anytime soon.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know, man. You never know. Never say never on that. I never limited what I could do. I never, you know, it's like I didn't want to be Beyonce. It's not to say that I can't play on a stage like her. You know, like I'm not taking that out of the you know, the bucket list, right? You could totally do it. You know. I love the journey, you know, I love the journey of just my story and the bands that I've played with, you know, the schlepping, in the snow, Sprinter van tours, you know, playing through laryngitis, you know, lack of
Wait a
sleep.
second. It's not all glamorous?
Oh no, man, it's not. It's exhausting work. It is exhausting work. The promos, but then to see the trajectory and the jumps, you know, like we always like just talking about just Fitz and the Tantrums in general, just, you know, that one song, that first big song for us being the little engine that could get us to number one. You know, the longest trek to number one Billboard charts history making. The only other band that had done that was Green Day years prior, you know. And to be able to say that one of the songs that I crafted from the demo start to, you know, to its completion traveled the way that I did through my career to get to this like this place. Like, this is the mountain. Like, I have a Billboard number one, not only one but two. You know, I have several platinum records. These are not things that I ever thought about when I was doing it, but I knew something was special there, so I kept at it. You know, I stayed in the Fitz, you know, stayed working with Fitz. We kept writing, even when we were exhausted. You know, it's like we wrote the second record literally 2 weeks after coming off of almost 2 years of touring and just exhaustion. But he lived so close to me, just went to his house, and we just worked. And we were so inspired by our experience that it came off on the record. You know, all of the fans, the way that we did the anthemic choruses, and how we wanted to sound like it did when we were in the big, you know, arenas, or, you know, like playing the big college events, like we did that Maroon 5 tour, and you know what I'm saying? Like all of these things, like just like that energy fed into that second album, and it just vibrated. So once we put that out, that was the energy that set the course for the band. We were always energetic, but by the time that second record came out, it was like you knew exactly who Fitz and the Tantrums were.
Oh yeah, huge success. I mean, amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I know that you talk very clearly to the rigors of being a successful musician. And I know that you're very careful about your health and about who you are emotionally and the kind of parameters you set around yourself. And maybe you can give us some beautiful advice on how one develops that sense of oneself. Because yeah, I've done the 2 years on a bus, believe me.
Yeah.
I've done the 2 years on a bus, and there are days where your brain is so scrambled, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're going to say or who you're talking to, or what even like 3 hours of sleep a night, getting off a plane to get on stage. You know, how do you prepare your body, your soul, and your mind for that experience?
Well, now, you know, I'm older, so a lot of the things that were attractive to me when I was younger, first starting on the road and traveling and doing what I love to do, it was very different. It was a lot of trial and error. You know, I didn't have the space to think about my mental health. I didn't have the, you know, the awareness and knowledge that I could say, we have too much on our plate. We need to pull back because this is affecting my instrument. You know, like knowing that I could communicate that to my team and be heard, and it'd be the final say. You know, it took a long time to kind of do that. Like I basically grew up on the road. Like I spent my early 20s through like my late 30s on tour. Right. You know. And through this process, yeah. So it took a lot of trial and error, but I think for me, the breaking point was recognizing I went through a very, very heavy depression period because I was literally watching my life flash before me in a way where everyone else was able to care for themselves, to meet and date and meet their spouses and have kids and buy houses and the whole thing. And I still felt that I was trapped in my 20s. Like I was still living like a college kid, even though I was doing very well you know, financially. I was in a place where I could buy my own house for the first time, like, but I was still kind of feeling, and because I was also the youngest person in the band, the only woman in the band as well, you know, and being surrounded by these changes, going from an indie to a major to the, you know, even more press, more blah 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 blah, like just trying to like navigate that territory became a lot, you know. But I didn't have the tools that I needed at the time to really work through the process of the mental health thing. Like, I was seeing a therapist, but it wasn't enough. Like, I needed to, like, not only just see the therapist, but I needed to actually look at myself and say, you need to create more boundaries in these spaces. You need to create self-care time for yourself when you're off. Because what I would do is I would get off a tour, and the first thing I would want to do was see all my friends, tired or not, because I knew that 2 weeks later I was going to be on a bus and I wouldn't be able to connect with anybody, you know. So it was a constant push of nurturing others, thinking that I was nurturing myself, but I was depleting myself in the process.
Oh my God. Those are such words I needed to hear.
Yeah.
Those are words I really needed to hear. I think replenishing yourself is the only way you're going to help others.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? I think like sometimes we do. I get this feeling about you. You're a caretaker. You're a caretaker. You love. And so sometimes you forget to like plug in, turn off the phone, turn off the thing. And I think it's really typical of musicians, singers, producers, talented people, creative people to do this. We're driven. We're driven. And I just heard you loud and clear tell me to dial it back.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, listen, like, there's only so much time on our sides as we get older, you know, and I think you start looking at life very, very differently when you get into a place of comfort in yourself, when you get into a place of like identifying what makes you happy and knowing that things are for a season, you know, you're forever. So it's really how you kind of nurture that experience before you can, you know, really have an impact on anybody else.
I'd like to kind of gracefully dive into Diversify the Stage. And the specific question that brought it to mind was my colleague Ishan Allen asks, given the focus on racial justice and equities over the past year, what kind of change or improvements are you seeing in the music industry? Are you seeing any? You know, is it beginning to happen? Because I know literally when I was MDing, when I was Harry Belafonte's MD, there was nobody that looked like us out there. Nobody that looked like Harry's band, like Harry, like me. I mean, that was it, you know. So I wonder if you could speak to that, the reality of that.
I think, you know, we honestly, we have a long road to go to get to the place that I'm aiming for. With really seeing, you know, having diversity not be a grassroots organization that helps to make that happen. Like, we no longer need us. We don't need Diversify the Stage outside of the youth programming and the teaching of, because it is in intention when people are hiring to hire diversely, to create inclusive spaces, to look at equity, look at, you know, assess their businesses and make sure that it's really representative of the music community as a whole, you know, behind the scenes, in front, all of it. What I am seeing is, I think people recognizing that coming together and working towards these change efforts is far more impactful than trying to recreate the wheel separately and everybody trying to be the hero, you know. At least that's what my experience has been, and that I've put the intention for that to be the thing, to connect the dots to organizations, to talk to every single, you know, the larger promoters and the independent promoters and the arenas, with the same, kind of intention that I have with, it doesn't matter who they are. Like I talk to Rob Light the same way that I speak to, a lighting technician that is also a part of the process of hiring, and just saying that, like without each of us, without all of these chains that bind, I don't have a production to have. But me as the artist have a lot of, one, responsibility, but then also two, I have a lot of power in saying this is how I want things to go for my shows. This is how I want, these are the people that I want to work with that are really investing in these actionable measures, that are really looking at bringing in folks that are otherwise overlooked.
Well, it's funny you said, because it's a corollary in Hollywood, where actors got together and said, this is what my team needs to look like, what they need to sound like. And we need, and I think it's important to stand up and say, yes, we need to. But I have a real personal question. Why are we afraid of joining trade unions and being part of, like, what is that about? How come we're not sound people and how come we don't enter the industry expecting to be at the highest levels of management, at the highest levels of execution? I'm just curious what.
I think just because that was a couple of questions. So on the entry level, a lot of these jobs are very mysterious. It comes down to the education, right? So if you're talking to, and it's so funny because I'm gonna give credit to Sean Sturge over at 8th Day Sound and Clair Global, two of the largest audio suppliers for productions. He made a great point in saying that when we're looking at the Black community specifically, right? If we're looking at our young Black men and specifically, athletics are what's pushed to our young people. The stardom of that, the amount of money that you can make with this particular skill. So that is normally the first thing that is really pushed into the Black community, or that dream, right? I want to be like Jordan, LeBron, like the whole thing. Like I remember that coming up in music when we're thinking, and this was my part in music. What are the first jobs that you think of in the music industry outside of being a musician? If you're looking at the business, you want to be the manager, you want to be the A&R. If we're looking just at the operations part, right? There's not a lot of areas that people are familiar with beyond that. And now we get it into production spaces. Unless you've been in theater and you understand theater, like the structure of that, learning how to work the lights, camera operations, the audio, like all of these things, unless that was something that you were engaged in, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to know about all of the careers on the back end. You're not going to know how important a tour manager is to getting people from point A to point B and who they work with, on your team, the manager, your agent. Most people don't even know what an agent does and how they are imperative to the growth and success of an artist.
I'm going to ask you a pragmatic question, because I know that a lot of people can't differentiate between agent and manager.
Yeah.
And so that's a tricky. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, because there's some managers that act as agents, right? So the folks that can actually get you the gig, that have the resources and the connections to get you a spot at that concert, to get you on the bill for that show. A lot of people that are starting, they often rely upon their managers to make those connections, those independent small venues, like, the hotel cafes of the world and the shoe bars and all that stuff. That actually, most part is probably because of the relationship between a manager and the promoter, if that person doesn't have an agent. The agent really comes into play. You get to a place where you really need to separate those entities. Your manager should be the functioning person between the record label, if you're signed, that engagement with your agent, who your agent is working on those shows. They're strategizing the bills you should be on, how to scale your business in the concerts industry. They have the relationships with those promoters and those talent buyers at the venues. Like, their whole infrastructure is about that, but they work also in areas outside of music. So if I have a few things that I do outside of music. Happens to be I also write, series for travel and food and stuff. My agent can help me pivot into that side of my career, through their different departments. So they handle all of these very strategic moves, brand partnerships, all of these things. Your agent is a functioning operator of you scaling your growth as an artist. So that's what they really do. Really good managers can also navigate that territory as well, and then it becomes a really great tag team.
Well, they should know enough about that territory
Yes.
to make sure that the agents are acting in your interest.
Yeah.
But the idea of a manager being a strategist for your career, that's something that's really sacred, I think, and that's something that an agent doesn't do.
They don't. I really wish, honestly, there were more managers that were really, in the same way I think about A&Rs, there's not a lot of managers that know anything about music and creativity. They have great ears. They can recognize when there's something magical, and they know how to, make it work, right? Somebody that they really, really believe in. They're like your boots on the ground at the start. And they're with you from the beginning. But, things change, like you may get bigger than your manager can handle, and you have to switch ships, which happens as well.
That's a tricky moment. You have to know how to deal with that.
Yeah, because they're primarily really, really your communicators. They're expressing all of your wants, your needs. They're looking at it from a business perspective. How do we market this? How do we brand this? How do we organize with the label to make sure that the artist is being represented in the best way possible? That's what managers are really involved in.
I'm going to encourage our viewers to please ask questions. I know I say this a lot, but this is an incredible opportunity to hear from Noelle, a person who's not just a successful artist, but the real artist, a real thinking, feeling, incredible singer, performer. And so it's not just fame that we're getting from you. We're getting life and spirituality. And so please do not fail to ask questions. Here's one. How did you start Diversify the Stage? And what are your goals for the organization?
I started Diversify the Stage last year just out of recognizing the necessity for activating my platform as an artist to talk about the issues behind the scenes, because it wasn't really, I think, being talked about from an artist perspective. Me being in this industry for 20 years and always being the only woman or woman of color in most cases, especially the earlier, beyond, my existing team. We always put a focus on hiring women and things like that, but we didn't have a lot of, ethnic diversity, right? So we're, trying to navigate that territory. I just wanted to start a conversation. What are the obstacles? Who's doing what? And really kind of schooling myself, where can I be helpful? And then recognizing if the pool is shallow, we need to focus on the next generation and introducing them. So when I was talking about the education, the lack thereof in this vast ecosystem of opportunities, I wanted to address that by inspiring leaders to talk to young people about what they did and to support them through mentorship. So that's where my head was. The second part of it is, how do we activate the existing community and expanding the territory of hiring, getting out of just the word of mouth practice and also implementing technology and utilizing resources that are available to find qualified staff for your tours. So I was like, we don't have anything like that. We don't have the LinkedIn of the concerts industry. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have an infrastructure that is familiar from the people that do the referrals, who often are agents. They refer, the managers refer, the whole thing, to, you know, the tour managers that are looking to fill these roles, that are looking to contract audio suppliers for their crew, you know, for their productions, for their clients, for their artists. We don't have that infrastructure. There are various databases that are out there, you know, that grassroots organizations have created in order to answer, you know, to be an answer to this lack of a centralized system. And they send out, you know, spreadsheets and, you know, the whole thing to folks that know about them. But again, it becomes if you don't know about this organization, you're not going to tap that resource to fulfill your staffing needs, you know? So I wanted to, one, connect the dots to all of these organizations that have existing databases, get them into a space that I can provide to folks that are looking for staff, that I can provide to my tour manager as a resource when we're saying we want to see diverse crew members in the areas where, outside of our internal team, as a lot of our team has been with us for years. We're not firing people, but when we have vacancies, we know that we can expand our territory in finding people, you know, but we want to hand this off to our suppliers and say, when you're sending or giving us staff for these shows, or when you're hiring on a local level, when speaking to the venue, here are these resources. We want to see diversity in these productions when we're working with you. And this is coming from the artist to you.
We demand it. I mean, and that's, we have a beautiful music industry program here at UCLA, headed by the Dean for Academic Affairs, Robert Fink, and we need to see students that are interested in diversifying the workforce that puts on music, that helps assist musicians and performers. And I think it's really important that, and I have to say, institutions are the front line. You said it perfectly. Education, learning these tools, learning the things that people do backstage, or as much as learning the things that people do on stage, and then demanding that those fields are diversified. I grew up in New York City, and I grew up playing in studios, in the studio scene, like jingles and commercials and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I did not see many people like me at all. And I didn't see many people like me who were assistant engineers, or people who were mastering engineers. And I think what you're saying is so important for the art form.
Yeah.
Not just for the business and for making a living, but for the art form. The art form has to reflect the constituency that it serves.
Yeah. There's a great question that came up in the chat. What are the most powerful levers you see for musical institutions for truly fostering and leading change? I think, honestly, college is interesting for me. I dropped out of a 4-year to go to a community college, primarily because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to go broke as I was exploring. So I chose to go to Pasadena City College from the school I dropped out of, go back and live with my parents and do that area of study. What I've been telling, and having conversations with suppliers, is not only looking at our Ivy League schools and looking at schools where, often the demographics are not reflective of diversity at all, is partnering with some of these grassroots organizations that are really community engaged, to find those young people, to engage those young people who don't think that they have the opportunities, one, to even enter UCLA because they can't afford it, and they're never going to be able to afford it, and then also just looking at, giving these young folks an opportunity to make a decision that could change their life.
I'm going to go a step further. Places like UCLA need to step into the community, and we know that.
Yes.
We know that. And one of the things that we're trying to do is access UCLA resources to communities, access the
Yeah.
recording studio, access so that people begin to see, so that we build relationships with schools where these students come from. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, yes, it's a very, very large institute with a huge pool of applicants.
Yeah, yeah. I was having a conversation with another, a school with a really wonderful program, and they really are working towards expanding outside of just the student body to make their program available to folks that wouldn't otherwise know about it. So reaching out to these high schools, underfunded public schools, are a really great way of tapping into this space. Looking at if your direct area isn't necessarily diverse, right? But you're few miles, 50 miles from an area that is, populated with mostly BIPOC or, all of these things.
It's your job to go
It's
there.
yeah, that's
I
exactly. And I
have
tell
a-
the
yeah.
vendors the same thing.
Yep,
You
I
know,
agree. I have a question here that I'd love to hear your answer. Have you experienced racist or sexist microaggressions in the recording studio, venues, from often white male engineers? And if so, how do you deal with them? What are some tips for those who are interested, who may experience this treatment?
Not directly in the studio. Where I have really gotten it is more on the scale of people assuming that I am just the backup singer, or people assuming that I don't contribute beyond, my place with the tambourine. And directing the conversations always to Fitz first, me second, or third. I have had experiences where I've literally been in the room with a VP of a major, a production company, and been ignored the entire time I was there. So I have had those experiences. For me, I think I may have gotten it from my mother. Like, I kind of let things roll off my back and I show it in a very different way. Or I connect with the one female of power in the room, and that person becomes my ally.
I mean, it's been my experience that if you want to get something done, if you want to, you go to the power female. You know,
You find the ally. But I mean, like, that's not it's not always the case that it works. But I've had success in doing that. The VP is the power player. Oh, the VP is actually the one that is the most creative. She's like me.
Right.
I'm gonna mess. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna spark the conversation and the interest with her. I've always also made it my intention to get to know the people on my team on a personal level, so that they understand my contributions. So when they're talking about Fitz and the Tantrums, it's with a knowledge and an understanding of who they're representing on the co-lead front, and they're advocates for me. So there's ways of doing it. The studio, I've been very lucky. Most of the time it's been my band, and we do all of the work. Rarely working with like producers and stuff like that. But I've had situations where, I'll be in a room with like a big producer and they have no idea that I wrote X, Y, and Z, and I'm like, yeah, that was me,
I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for the example you set for me, for our young musicians, singers, songwriters, and I'm so grateful for the talk we've had, the time we've had. I want to show you something, okay?
Yeah.
I want to show you something. Look at this. Get ready to cry.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's cool, man.
I am here on the floor of Drum, 85 Avenue A in New York City, sharing a sacred moment with Noelle, the first time that I've played in a public setting for a year and plus. And I'm so grateful to share with you, because that thing we do is so sacred and so grounding and so
That's
necessary.
so funny, because I wasn't kidding, when you were playing the piano, it is literally literally the first time, in a while, beyond myself, like playing what I play, right? Digital keyboard stuff for production, whatever, heard an actual piano being played live. You know what I'm saying? Like it's been all acoustic guitar all year, like a lot of that stuff, or just, streaming and all of this stuff. I miss live music so much.
Well, you're going to have to come to Drum tonight, and you're going to have to come perform with us.
I mean, I wish I could. I'm in all the way in LA.
We had an experience where we inaugurated a theater back in who knows, whatever. Anyways, October, November, and it wasn't in front of an audience. It was in front of a camera crew. It was in front of a 6-person camera crew, and there were these hardened union cameramen weeping.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't heard music physically in a room in so long. I'm talking about like New York City, hardened union cameramen.
Yeah.
In tears.
Yeah.
Because that's the power of music. That's the power of life. Music is a sacred thing.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful that you are a spirit guide.
Thank you. You too, man. You too. I mean, enjoy it tonight. Have the best time. You're gonna feel the energy. Just want to, like, it's like I can't express that we were able to play some shows last year, and after 7 months of not being on a stage, it was just like, what? It was like larger. I felt like I was 20 again. Yeah. Like that kind of energy, so we're all going to be getting our sea legs back. We're all going to be working towards figuring out the next steps and the change. And, obviously the work that I'm doing with Diversify the Stage is really building the roadmap so that when we come in in like 2022, 23, the programs are fully up and running. The partners are engaged. Folks have it in their mindset that they want to, expose everyone to what they're doing.
It's funny because it's just beginning to happen. We just got confirmation of the Newport Jazz Festival. We got a little tour of California, Cal State Northridge, and so it's just beginning to happen. And I really do believe that we will never look at this the same way again. We'll never take it for granted. I never will take it for granted again. And we're committed. We're committed to the vision you have for seeing the stage, the front of house, the back of house, the technical crew. We want diversity. We want it now.
And I'm happy to work with UCLA in any way you guys want to do it. There's plenty of opportunities to craft and start shaping the next generation of leadership. Wow. People that can hire folks, people that are looking to gain technical careers, our math, science, STEM, enthusiasts that are students. There's so much work available for you in the concerts industry on those technical levels, the advancements in technology, just in video and lighting and all of the things that we're seeing. It's, there's so many viable careers that are available to you.
I think you have to be careful because we're going to take you up on that offer.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
I just want you to know something. We have, I just want to thank you, Noelle. I knew we would have a chill time. I knew we would just, just conversing. And I know, from hearing your music that your heart is huge and that you've graced us with your presence this evening. Thank you, Noelle.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Folks, we have a beautiful still series coming up on Wednesday, June 9th. My dear friend, Ayodele Cassell, who's an incredible tap dancer and a warrior woman for diversity. I love her. I've done much projects with her. She's going to be on a stamp. Ayodele is going to be on a United States Postal Service stamp celebrating tap. So don't miss this June 9th, 3 to 4:30 p.m. here at the Stills Waiting Speaker Series. Thank you.